Welcome. Good afternoon to you. You're welcome to the program. It's Good Afternoon, Ghana. My name is Ane Fuampofo, and this afternoon we'll go into the area of education. A few issues have come up when it comes to resources for the various schools, and of course, it's directly linked to GETFUND. When you want to consider what members of parliament are using their GETFUNDs for, the complaints that are coming in, and the allegations of the capping of GETFUND. So we'll have the understanding of this, how it's working, the states in which we are. Dennis Nana Apia-Labi-Ampofo, who is the president of NUGS, will join us. Also, Peter Kwesi Nochukuto, who is also the ranking member of the Educational Committee or Education Committee in Parliament. The former PRO for the Ghana, the Education Ministry, and also a member of the Education Committee, Vincent Eko Assefa, will also join us, and also Kofi Asare, Executive Director, Africa Education Watch. We, in brief, call it EDUWATCH. He will also join us via Zoom. And then they have gone round really to pick up some information, and we'll bring all that to you, an explanation to what they have seen. Let's take a breather. When we come back, these guests will join us. You're welcome back. So there's been various calls, about what government should do about GETFUND, and that's why we're gathering this afternoon with the guests to discuss from every office what the observation really has been so far and how we can, make things better. We have Dennis Ampofo, who has joined me. He's a president of NUGS. Dennis, you're welcome. Good afternoon to you. How was your team and everybody in school?
We're good. We're good by the grace of God.
Okay. So we would also have Vincent Eko Assefa to join us, a member of the Education Committee. He was also the PRO for the Education Ministry before. But Kofi Asare, Executive Director for Africa Education Watch, has also joined us via Zoom. Before we go to him, let me bring you, I think there was a protest by your team, and EDUWATCH as well. Let's have the video of that protest.
Members of both groups marched to Parliament wielding placards to protest the capping of the Ghana Education Trust Fund. Presenting their petition, President of the National Union of Ghana Students, Dennis Apia-Labi, argued the education sector has over the years been deprived of the needed budgetary allocation, hence their call for Parliament to reject the new GETFUND formula.
We've moved from 100% to 39%. Mr. Chairman, if your committee does not take this as an urgent requirement, we will get to 1%.
Zero.
And one day, people of this country will pay monies, funds, levies, 2.5% every single commodity, and it won't be used for education. So if you see us standing before you, in all humility, Mr. Chairman, the students of this country have their hopes on you. So many times you've intervened with your committee to defend the rights of students. Today, we are here with just two requests. Reject the GETFUND formula and quickly initiate steps that would uncap GETFUND.
Chairman of the Education Committee of Parliament, Kwabena Amankwa Esiama, after receiving the petition on behalf of Parliament, assured the group of a favorable response.
We are grateful. GETFUND is the only dedicated fund that has been earmarked for the development of education in our country. Capping it to the extent of giving it about 17.5% in recent act, I think it's not the right thing. Education is expensive, very, very expensive. But if you try vices and ignorance of the youth, in later years it will cost you harmfully and more than if you had used the money to educate your youth.
Peter Nochukuto, a ranking member on the Education Committee, had this to say.
We are putting pressure on them to look at it and make recommendations to the House. I am sure your presence here will give indication to the Finance Committee that we need to do something about it as quickly as possible. And when that is done, be assured that this committee will be there for you as we have been all the time.
Welcome back. And so you saw Dennis in there, and then of course EDUWATCH also playing a part of it. Let me go on to the Zoom space first and speak with Mr. Kofi Asare, who's joined us there. Mr. Asare, you're welcome. Good afternoon to you. I'm sorry, I think you have to unmute. Okay, so as we wait for Mr. Kofi Asare, kindly unmute your mic and then we can hear you. The production team just help us there so that we can, get it. And I can tell you that also EDUWATCH has been going around some educational installations and institutions, and they're coming through with reports that don't look good at all, including, I don't know if, Henry, if you have the video. There's a school in Adentan, I should say, that was writing exams, and the report actually indicates that this school has been practicing this since 2020. They write exams outside in under trees, in the open. So if there's rains, definitely it's obvious that that is not going to come off. But let me speak with Dennis, who is here with me. Dennis, you're welcome once again.
Thank you
so
very
what
much.
Really, at what point did the problem become so huge that it pushed you out to go and demonstrate?
So if you follow the issues very, very carefully, you realize that since 2020, we've had something to say in and around this matter. We've consistently pressed home that there's a need to uncap GETFUND. But someone will ask, you've been in the boardroom for a very long time. Why would you now want to move out of the boardroom? I think that the triggering point came when this year's formula was laid. If you look at this year's formula for GETFUND disbursement, or allocation. 2022, we did total of accruals was 3.2 billion. 3.2 billion. Out of the 3.2 billion, total of 1.8 billion was allocated, representing 56%. That's a decline because the previous year we had done 60%. And this year we are doing 39%. This year, a total of 4.6 billion is expected. Out of the 4.6 billion that's expected, 1.8 billion would be allocated to GETFUND. That is 39%. So if you carefully examine the situation, we started from 66% in 2019. We came to 60, another 60, and then 56 and 39. So I won't be a prophet to say that next year we'll do 20%.
Because it keeps coming down.
It keeps coming down. Much more worrying is the fact that on the 21st of December, just some few months ago, the Ministry of Finance, through the chairman of the Finance Committee in Parliament and the Honorable Minister for Finance, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, moved a motion to amend the Capping Act 947 to further cap it. So now there is a double cap that moves the cap from 25% to a 17% thereabout. So you realize that the students of Ghana and the entire educational sector is cornered at this point in time because there is a consistent decline in investment in education. I revert you to the budget statement that was presented to Parliament to look at the budget statement critically and you realize that there was a decline in expenditure or investment in education. But then it becomes problematic when we play with the rhetoric of prioritizing education but want to take away investment in education. Mind you, GETFUND is the only statutory fund allocated to education in this country. And the framers of the GETFUND Act clearly demonstrated that they expect that Ghanaians will commit themselves to mobilization of funds towards education. And now we are challenged with an existential threat to the entirety of GETFUND. Any threat to the entirety of GETFUND is a threat to the education of this country because if what is statutorily allocated is threatened, then those funds which are discretionarily allocated would not even exist. Now, to put the problem into perspective, you count the number of schools under trees. We're doing a matter of about 4,000. You count about 2.3 million young children in school without desks. You count student loan arrears dating back from last semester. This year, you realize that we've paid some little, but it had to take a lot of student outcry before it's paid. Now you come to the topical issue that you and I discussed with some few weeks ago on the rise of fees. Where is it coming from? Then I direct you to the issue or the concern of on accommodation crisis. There are so many issues in the educational sector. We are not professing that when GETFUND is uncapped, it will solve all our problems in education. But we are saying that the STEM schools that the Ministry of Education is building all around the country deserves funding. Student Loan Trust Fund deserves funding. Infrastructure deficits in our various universities deserves funding. Schools under trees can be eliminated. Over the last 4 or 5 years of the capping regime, a total of over 3 billion Ghana cedis has been diverted from education. Now, clearly, all that I have catalogued proves clearly that the capping regime or the Act 947 is the biggest threat or enemy to Ghana's educational prospect. And that is why the National Union of Ghana Students, with the mandate of the students of this country, who are the hardest hit by this capping regime, ought to be worried. And not just us. And the danger is that not just us. I am particularly worried because of our members of parliament. So if you look at my placard yesterday, it was a direct message to the members of parliament. That if you're a member of parliament, you definitely know that your constituency has an issue with education. The deficit in your constituency can be solved when GETFUND is uncapped and funds are released from GETFUND. So if members of parliament who are supposed to be worried about the lack of or the decline in investment in their constituency are not worried, and they will move on to 21st December to further tighten the capping regime, then it is a very scary situation. So yesterday, we did present a petition, but whilst presenting the petition, I was very clear that this is a test of the treaty and the faith or the utmost good faith that the people of this country have reposed in the Parliament of Ghana. Finance Ministry did not act in vacuum. They acted with the endorsement and blessings of Parliament. The Parliament of Ghana has a responsibility. The 275 members of Parliament have a responsibility to prove to Ghanaians that they deserve the trust that we've put in them.
Okay, so let me engage Vincent Assefuah, who is also an honourable member of Parliament and a member of the Education Committee. Vincent, thank you for joining us. You're welcome to Good Afternoon, Ghana. Hello, Vincent.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I can hear you. If you can just raise your voice a bit.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, great. Now, you do tell us, you being in Parliament and of course also being on the Education Committee, what has really informed the consistent reduction of percentage of amounts allocated to GETFUND?
Well, let me say a very good afternoon to your cherished viewers and listeners, and to my brother also in the studio. Good afternoon to you. First and foremost, let me indicate that somewhere in 2017, the government through the finance minister came to Parliament and indicated to the people of Ghana through its representatives in Parliament that it needed to cap some earmarked funds. And it did so through Act 947, that is the Earmarked Funds Capping and Realignment Act. And when you critically assess the act, you realize that there were about 14 earmarked funds that needed to be cut. And the rationale was that government had priorities. Mm-hmm. Government had certain policies, especially during the build up to the 2016 elections. There were some commitments that were made, and government felt that it would be proper to have a holistic allocation of our resources to all sectors, having regard to the fact that some funds are actually earmarked. And so I recall in 2017, in the first State of the Nation address, His Excellency the President indicated that it's about time that we implement free senior high school education. It's about time that we have a real look at our NHIS difficulties or deficit in terms of amount of money that are supposed to be paid to service providers and what have you. It's about time that we have a factory in all our districts, and it's about time that we reintroduce teacher training allowances, we introduce nursing training allowances, and these are things that have been in the system for so long a time, and we believe that it was something that we needed to also channel some resources to. And so it triggered the need for us to have some allocations to all these sectors. And Parliament actually approved this act, and GETFUND obviously was not an exception to that. I have worked with the Ministry of Education. I remember even at the time there were concerns from the GETFUND administration that yes, the capping is good, but the GETFUND is the only statutory fund that is supposed to take care of our education system in this country. Working with the Ministry of Education, going around the country, I realized that there were some deficits that we had with respect to infrastructure, and so the GETFUND levy was supposed to deal with these infrastructure deficits. Having said all these, it is acknowledged that indeed GETFUND needs resources to be able to prosecute the agenda of ameliorating infrastructure deficit that we have in our system. But if we can cite an example of COVID, when COVID came, the economy was shut down. Government needed to make sure that people who were dying at the time were saved. People who were not going to work, they needed to be fed because they were not on monthly salaries like you and I. So government needed to do all these things. And so even when we thought that the capping would be short-lived or will be for a short period of time, and we will be able to adjust ourselves to be able to make sure that the capping will be eliminated from the system. Unfortunately, COVID came, Ukraine came, and what have you. And so it is making it difficult to have government realign, or if you like, make sure that the capping is eliminated, or if you like, even reduced. And so we agree, and I personally think that the call by the National Union of Ghana Students is a good call. It's a call that I fully support. I believe that the educational system is a very essential sector, like the health sector. And if it's an essential sector, then such a capping will only go to affect the education system that we have. But the exigencies of the time will not allow the government to have the fiscal space as we thought, or if you like, as we envisaged in 2017, that let's have this capping so that government will have some amount of fiscal space to be able to deal with other sectors of the economy. So that has actually informed the capping of the GETFUND and other 13 statutory earmarked funds. And it's not something that is healthy for us. We are not happy about that. As a member of parliament and as a member of the education committee, I am not happy about that. However, we can only implore the Ministry of Finance and the government to have a look at this if there can be some realignment, especially when you look at the trend. You can see that it has been a reduction as to the allocation, and this year I am foreseeing about 39% of the GETFUND being allocated that amount of money. That's about 4.6 billion. The impression I'm getting is that only about 1.8 billion will be going to GETFUND, which is woefully inadequate. We have a lot of uncompleted GETFUND projects in our various senior high schools and our various junior high schools, and all these things will have to be completed. And if there are no funds, then clearly the education system is going to suffer. And so I support the call that we should have a real look at the capping of the GETFUND.
So it's not just left at the point of support. It's also left at the point of you ensuring by pushing from Parliament, because as it stands now, like Dennis said, the finance minister can never take that decision on his own if Parliament doesn't allow him. But as it is now, it looks like Parliament did allow him for a statutory fund to be manipulated the way you are doing, where it keeps reducing. So it's moved from 66% to 30 something percent, 60, 56. So we're projecting that by next year it should get to about 20% or zero. How is that?
I don't think that manipulation is the right word to use.
What is the right word to use?
When you look at how bills come to Parliament, every bill that comes to Parliament comes with a memorandum. And the memorandum set out the rationale, the reasons as to why that bill is coming to Parliament.
Not to cut you, but Vincent, there's a reason why it is a statutory fund.
Yes.
So that when you send memorandums to or memoranda to Parliament, it doesn't be a part. There's a reason why, and in the wisdom of those who crafted the law, there's a reason why it has been put under a statutory fund, so that, or a statutory law, so that it's always, at every point in time when a government takes over, it becomes one top priority or among your top priorities. And even if you look at this government, one of the top priorities is education. So what is the reason that we are so comfortable with and justifying that it doesn't now it fall under priorities of priorities?
I agree with you, but if you look at the law, if you look at the Act 749, it also gives the minister of a particular sector, in this instance probably the Ministry of Education, in consultation with the relevant sector minister, which is the Ministry of Finance, to review enactments under which the earmark funds specified in the schedule, that is the last schedule where the 14 earmark funds has been established, to make a determination as to whether or not a particular earmark fund has outlived its purpose. So at every point in time, it gives some amount of power, and the law has been very flexible to give some amount of power to the sector minister to be able to determine as to how an earmark fund will have to be used or not, or even if the earmark fund has outlived its purpose. And so I am only saying that it is a good call. Statutory funds are supposed to be statutory funds, especially when they are earmarked funds specifically supposed to deal with a certain canker or challenge in the society. However, we have a very diverse economy. We have the health sector, we have the education sector, we have the industry sector, the manufacturing sector. And so the fact that we have a statutory fund to be able to deal with one sector and others are struggling, others are not doing well as a state, we have to make sure that there can be some realignment to be able to make sure that the economy can move ahead. But I am also saying that the fact that it's a statutory fund, or if like the fact that some power has been given to the ministry, doesn't mean that the ministry can be capping it as and when they want, especially when now we are doing about 39%. It is not right. It is woefully inadequate. And for me, from where I sit, we can only make the argument, or we can only make our concerns known to the Ministry of Finance, especially when they come to Parliament, for us to be able to engage with them and know that, hey, GETFUND is a statutory fund. Doing about 70 or 80% was a worry, but I mean, it was not that worrying to the extent that we could not do anything about it. But now getting to 39%, that is why I said that I agree with the cause of the National Union of Ghana Students. I support that position. And of course, at every point in time when we have the opportunity to deal with this particular formula, our voices will be heard for us to be able to make some inroads in it. Hello?
Dennis, can you hear me? Sorry, Vincent, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Right, so after the group presented its petition, have you made any move as a committee?
The committee will meet, I think, Tuesday. So we are going to deal with some of these concerns.
Right. Thanks for your time. Let me come back to Dennis. Dennis.
Annie,
Yes.
Well, I appreciate, and then, we appreciate the concerns of the Honorable.
Your microphone is on?
Is it on now?
Okay.
Okay, so we appreciate the concerns and the support from the Honorable Member of Parliament. He comes from the students' fraternity. He's an experienced hand when it comes to the struggles of our educational sector. He moved to the Ministry of Education as PRO. He's walked the landscape of our country. He's traveled a land, so he knows very well the challenges we face. Now, my worry and concern is that the intent of Act 947 was to free funds and realign our needs, because in the exigencies of time, our needs in some areas were quite urgent and demanding. But then I make a case and say that, Annie,
Yes.
the need and urgency at the educational sector is top priority. So even if the certain earmark fund has outlived its purpose, or there is excess there that needs to be realigned to suit our needs as a country, which I clearly concede to, the educational sector is not part of those sectors. It's not part of those funds that can be touched. In any case, it's an area that would even need extra injection or extra investment.
Right.
So it does not hold in entirety, or does not apply to the Ministry of Education or the educational sector when the concern of realigning certain funds to meet our needs come in. No, it can't be.
Hold on, let's engage Kofi Asare. He's joined us again via Zoom. Kofi, can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah,
Okay, great. I can hear you. Nice that we have you. So I've just spoken with Echo Vincent Asefa, who used to be the PRO of the Ministry of Education, now an MP and also a member of the Education Committee, and has responded to, your protest and petition. Says that I think he supports your call, but that's about what we can get from him. The Ministry of Education is yet to meet. But first, I think you can give us a brief of what your institution has observed so far when you toured some of the schools, of which I've received some of the videos.
Well, let me indicate that we don't tour schools. We work in the schools, so we see the situation every day.
Okay, we're trying to have a discussion with Kofi Asare of EDUWATCH, and it looks like
So we are always abreast with the situation at the community level. Look, anytime you visit a community, a school, and you find that there's no school and children are there out of school, or there's a school, poor infrastructure, no desks, children are lying on their bellies and learning, etc. The only thing that strikes is that there's a huge infrastructure financing deficit. And GETFUND being the major infrastructure financing.
okay, so we're not hearing Kofi, but if you watch on your screen, those are some of the excerpts of videos that his organization was able to record when these schools were actually having the exams or writing the exams. And imagine students writing exams in such condition. They're sitting in three numbers on one desk. So 3 students are on one desk, as you can see. I don't know how invigilators are managing, but you have to manage. It's a JHS students at Adenta Community School were writing end of term exams this morning. As of the time they actually recorded the video, they just finished today's paper. He says, and thank God it did not rain. So it's been so since 2020. Meanwhile, the school is located near the District Assembly. DCE drives past by every day to work, and there are 2 abandoned school projects nearby. Help create awareness for this action, please. And I saw that and I thought that was wild, really.
The amount of money that has been lost as a result of the capping or the amount of money that has been diverted by the Minister of Finance between 2018 and 2022, excluding this particular year because I know that Parliament will reject it, it's about 3.7 billion. That 3.7 billion is more than how much the Ministry of Education required to eliminate all 5,400 schools under trees and sheds. It tells you the opportunity cost of having this obnoxious policy or obnoxious law, which Ketsi Parliament, the Minister of Finance, is wreaking havoc on education. Now, let me quickly come to what my very good friend, Mr. Sefua
Vincent,
said.
right.
Yes, I appreciate his concern, but it is very difficult for you to convince me that you are an advocate for education when you still want to appreciate the need for capping. The two are mutually exclusive. Anyone who believes in equitable access to quality education will not in any way justify the diversion of ring-fence funds for education. If you know how the public system works, it is not the case that GETFUND is the only source of funding for education. There are various funds. There are various funding streams. In the same way, there are also various funding streams for health. But you always have what we call ring-fence funds. For almost every sector, you find one, where specifically that fund is being used for a particular purpose. That is in addition to the general budgetary, allocation. So it is not the case that if GETFUND is not capped and GETFUND cash taken to another sector will collapse. No, it is never the case. In any case, the 2023 budget estimates to raise about 143 billion in terms of revenue. The GETFUND that the Minister of Finance is so obsessed with, the total accrual this year is only 4% of the total projected revenue of Ghana in 2023. So anyone who creates the impression that GETFUND is needed so badly that without GETFUND or GETFUND levy accruals, some aspects of the economy will collapse, does not appreciate the full, architecture.
Is it 4% or 5%?
Baskets and resources. GETFUND
Yeah,
is
is it
less
4%?
than 4%.
I thought it was 5%.
The 4.6 billion is anticipated accruals into the GETFUND levy this year.
Okay.
It's less than 4% of government's total revenue projected in the budget for 2023. Right. So it is not the case that any subsector or any sector of the economy will collapse because funds for education will not be diverted to that sector. I want to, on this point, indicate that Parliament is the only one that has the power to compel government to uncap the GETFUND or uncap the GETFUND itself, because they empowered the Minister of Finance to visit this atrocity on education. And so they should solve the problem that they've created. And I have confidence in the Finance Committee, even though they took part in the first capping and then in the dawn second capping of the GETFUND. But I appreciate that majority of the members have now gotten to realize that they have actually been part of the problem than the solution by either supporting or not opposing the first and second capping, for which reason I believe that they will do the needful next week when GETFUND, the formula comes to them. They should reject the formula. When they reject the formula, it will force government, it will force the Minister of Education and the President to put pressure on the Finance Minister to uncap GETFUND, because if they don't approve the formula, there won't be disbursement to finance free senior high school infrastructure project, which are government key priorities. When that happens, government will be compelled to immediately initiate steps and uncap GETFUND. And uncapping GETFUND is not a process. It is not a process that will take more than 24 hours. The Finance Minister used less than 24 hours to second cap GETFUND on the dawn of 21st December 2022. So the Finance Minister can uncap GETFUND within 24 hours. And we want to see that being done once the political will is there. So the Select Committee should prove all of us wrong and then uncap, reject the GETFUND formula for 2023 when it comes to them next week, Monday.
Let's engage Peter Kwesi Nochukuto, who is a ranking member for Education Committee in Parliament. Honorable Member, thank you for your time. If you can hear me, good afternoon to you.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I hope you are good too.
Oh, very well too.
Great. Firstly, who is responsible for presenting the formula for disbursement?
Thank you very much. Annually, it is the administrator of the fund who is responsible for the presentation of the formula. But in any case, because we have a sector minister, the Minister of Education is also in attendance. He introduces the administrator to the House, and then the administrator takes over to present the formula for approval.
Is it possible that the formula could be, churned out by the finance minister himself, or maybe anybody he appoints, and then they push it under the administrator's desk to come and present?
No, he cannot, because it is a fund established by an act of parliament, and it is specifically noted that it is the administrator who is appointed by the president who can present the formula for approval by the House. So the Minister for Education has nothing to do with the presentation of the formula.
Now, I'm talking about the finance.
The finance committee?
Yes, the finance minister, the finance ministry itself.
He cannot. It is not in his domain. He is only to collect the tax, the 2.5%, and then transfer to GETFUND. That is what he is to do. So he has no control over the fund as far as the presentation before the House is concerned. What he has done, the minister has done, is to cut the proceeds that are to go to GETFUND and other funds established by Parliament. That is what he has done, and that's what we are contesting now.
So how did Parliament manage to entertain the capping when, some sectors were earmarked under 2017 and it included GETFUND, and you thought it was going to last a short while, as Vincent was saying, and it has lasted all through COVID season, through Russia-Ukraine season till 2023, and Parliament is still looking on?
Yes, it is not that Parliament is looking, because we were told that it was for a period, short period, so that they could get some more money to do one or two things. But as we have realized now, it has gone beyond that.
So
now,
hold on, Honorable. Hold on. When they said it was for a short period, did they provide a specific time measurable that you should hold whichever ministry in charge to, in terms of dates and time?
No, there was no date and time.
And you looked on
that accompanied the bill was that it was an interim measure. So an interim measure, as far as Parliament is concerned, will not be more than 2-3 years, because when it is approved for you, you must come back again. And this is the time he has come back now, only to increase it again. So we are of the view that no, what he has done is an infringement of the law. So Parliament should reverse the law so that he can no longer cap GETFUND. That is what we are aiming at.
Honorable, there are a lot of questions I want to ask you, but I just want to say, I want to say to you that you have failed us.
How?
In terms of Parliament, especially the Education Committee, you failed us.
I will disagree with you that these bills don't come to the Committee on Education. Committee on Education is not responsible for financial bills. It is the Committee on Finance that goes to sit on it when it is presented before the House. So Committee on Education, we have no hand at all in financial bills before Parliament. So we have not failed in any way. We are rather standing up now that enough is enough of the minister as far as GETFUND is concerned. There are other funds which are still being capped, but nobody is saying anything about it. We are only talking about that affects education. So the Education Committee has not failed anybody. We are rather creating the awareness now that if we don't do anything about this, it will continue. And if we don't take time, the Minister for Finance will come with a bill to scrap GETFUND.
So who is supposed to do something about it?
It is the Finance Committee that must sit up and say, no, Minister, it is enough. You can no longer continue capping the funds. So there are so many funds. We have the road fund, we have the common fund, we have the health insurance fund, a number of them, ESLA and all those things. So the Finance Committee must come up and say, we will not allow you to do A, B, C, D again. So we education, we have realized that no, education is suffering. We are not getting the enough resources that are needed to run the education in this country. So why don't we uncap GETFUND? So we are showing the way. And I think we should rather be congratulated that we are starting up to the task that as a committee we have discovered and realized that no, we should not allow this to continue.
So we should congratulate you for looking on from 2017
for
to
taking on the government now that no, Minister, it is enough. Remove GETFUND from the list because that is the only source of funding education in this country.
What step are you going to take to ensure that the finance minister or the ministry will heed your call of uncapping the fund?
We started this struggle as far back as 2021 when we were discussing the formula for GETFUND. So last year, the House accepted a motion moved by myself and the chairman that GETFUND must be capped. And it was anonymous last year in March. So the speaker instructed that we should come up with a private members bill. And we presented that on 29th November last year. And it was referred to the Finance Committee. You see the issue now. It did not come to education, it's a Finance Committee. So we have been putting pressure on them. Why is it that they are delaying discussion of the bill and presenting the report to the House? So that is what we have done so far. We are waiting on the Finance Committee. I know the Speaker raised the issue one day, but a month ago when we came back from recess. And I think the Finance Committee should tell the House why they have not sat on it or why they are delaying the process. So we are waiting for the Finance Committee, and unfortunately, the Speaker is not around. And when he comes back, the last time I raised the issue on the floor, he directed that all those bills before the committee must come up quickly. So let's hope that they will do it as quickly as possible. Now that the student unions have joined the committee in pushing forward the idea of decapping GETFUND.
You're not on the Government Assurances Committee, but let me just find out if you know that education is part of government's priorities.
Well, education should be every government's priority. And that is why we are saying that the funding for education is declining.
Well, as it is now,
Yeah,
I'm not so sure if this government really has made education as its priority. Do you have it on your list as part of the priorities of this government?
Well, for this government, I don't think they have education as a priority. They have chosen only one aspect of the education ladder, that is the free senior high school level, and have abandoned the other sectors. So, having abandoned them, the other sectors, we don't see any equity in the system. So that is what we are fighting, that, look, you have abandoned basic education. There are over 3.5 million pupils in basic schools without furniture. There are over 3,000 basic schools without infrastructure. There are still schools under trees. So what we should do is to make sure that GETFUND gets enough money and work with it. But since 2017, they have taken over 5 billion from GETFUND. And if that 5 billion had remained with GETFUND, I'm sure the number of classrooms they would have put up, everybody would have been happy with the government. But as it is now,
we are disappointed.
Okay, before I let you go, having mentioned that there are some school projects that have been abandoned, you have EDUWATCH going around and monitoring those activities. What are you doing about it as a committee as well? Because,
Yes,
I mean...
They are. Yeah, because we as a committee, we also work around the country. Not every part of the country, but selected regions. And we have discovered that actually there are abandoned projects since 2017. And if those projects are completed, I can tell you that this so-called double track will be a thing of the past. Congestion in the dormitories in senior high schools will be a thing of the past. But no serious attention is being paid to this infrastructure by this government. And that is why we are challenging them that, you have taken enough. Stop taking it from GETFUND, give it to them, and let them continue with work for the benefit of our students in this country.
Right. Honorable Member Peter Kwesi Notukutoy, thank you for your time and thanks for speaking to us. We'll get back to you as we prove the matter further.
Thank you.
Right. He's a ranking member on the Education Committee.
Annie, before I move on to the way forward and all of those things, let me run you through why the National Union of Ghana students is a bit worried, and then we want to see more done. Because you see, if you look at the international standard that Ghana wants to conform to and what we've signed up to, it is expected of government around the world to commit between 4 to 6% of their GDP to education, to meet the standard that the world expects education to. And this is the litmus test of when we say a country is prioritizing education or is concerned. At least you need to allocate between 4.4 to 6% of your GDP to education. Then you need to also, total of your expenditure, between 15 to 20% of your expenditure must go into education-related issues. Now, let me give you the average that the country has been doing up until 2023. Ghana was doing 4% on the average from 2017 till 2022, which was respectfully or satisfactorily okay. 4% of GDP up to 2022. And they were doing 17.1% in terms of our expenditure every year. That's the average. Now come to 2023, and the reason why every single Ghanaian must speak up at this point, because something is definitely wrong somewhere. This year, we've dropped, not only according to the international standard, but our own average. We've allocated just 3.01% of our nominal GDP to education this year. 3.01. That is below our average of 4%. And that is also below the international standard we've committed ourselves to. Now, when it comes to the total expenditure of government going into education this year, it is around 12.9%. As against the global average of 15 to 20%. As against our own average of 17%. So that's in that first instance, something is wrong this year. Now, it translates to what is happening in GETFUND, and it gives you a reason to be worried, because the decline is not just with the total budgetary figures, but again to GETFUND. Now, let me bust your bubble more and why we should be more worried.
We have a few minutes.
The total expected funding for education this year is 24 billion. If you look at what GETFUND is intended to provide to support education, and you look at what donation are also intended to support education with, the difference is just 163 million. Donor support for education this year is expected to be 1.7 billion. GETFUND is expected to be 1.8 billion. This is serious, and we ought to be worried. If you run your own country, and through the levies you pay to run your own country, your donations are almost up to your own effort, your own revenue in levying in GETFUND, then you should be worried. But this is not because the Ghanaian people are not going to pay taxes or levies. This is a decision that has been occasioned by an act, by the tacit support of our House of Records and a house that's expected to defend us. So in summary, what we are saying is that we respect and appreciate the effort of the Education Committee, Select Committee in Parliament. The private members' bill that's come from them is a huge one, and it's a boost. For me, yesterday, it goes beyond the petition we presented. It is about the bipartisan approach of the select committee to see this done. But then my worry is that I am just praying that they exert some level of urgency, forceful and prioritize this, and everyone in the house. This is not a Ministry of Education fight. This is not a GETFUND fight. It is a constituency. It is a district. It is a regional. It is every single student worry and concern. And then it comes to the doors of the Finance Committee in Parliament. I do not believe that we should go to the Ministry of Finance because that is where it is mandated from.
Yeah.
So I believe that if there is any place that can save the education of this country in this now time that we speak, then it is the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana.
Right. Dennis Nanapia Labian Pofo is the president for NUGS. Also, we had Peter Kusi Notuku, ranking member for Education Committee. Also, Vincent Eko Asafua joined us. He's a member of the Education Committee. And Kofi Asare, executive director for Africa Education Watch, that's EDUWATCH, also joined us via Zoom. And we had all our guests with us. Thank you.
Thank you
coming
very
into
much.
the studio. I am Ania Fampo. Thanks for watching. We'll go through, follow up with Parliament and see what actions they can take as far as this GETFUND capping is concerned.